I never thought the one who would destroy my life would be my own sister. She stole my love, sabotaged the career I had painstakingly built, and even wore the wedding dress I had saved for 8 long months to buy at her own engagement party with the man who once belonged to me. But she forgot one thing: I am not a puppet for her to pull the strings. And that night, right in front of the entire family, I decided to tear down the curtain of lies she had woven for so long. Chapter 1. The Stolen Wedding Dress. I never imagined that the day I would face the truth would also be the day my younger sister wore my wedding dress. She stood in the center of the banquet hall, spinning proudly amid the applause and flattery. It looks better on someone who truly deserves love. Ela laughed loudly, her voice dripping with mockery. The whole family burst out laughing, treating it as a witty joke. But I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the scene as if someone had just stolen the last breath from my chest. That dress was not just clothing. It was the dream I had saved every penny for during 8 long months, the embodiment of hope for a future I once believed in. And yet tonight it had been turned into a prop for my sister's engagement party. Worse still, none of those raising their glasses in celebration noticed the injustice or the pain reflected in my eyes. I smiled. But that smile was not born of joy nor of pride. It was the smile of someone who already knew how the show would end, of someone holding a secret powerful enough to bury every ounce of fake glory Ella had built all these years. In the handbag, I clutched a small remote lay silently like a weapon, waiting for its moment to be unleashed. But before everything exploded, I want to tell you the journey that brought me here. The journey of an eldest daughter who had always lived in the shadow of the family's golden child. I once believed that if I endured, if I worked hard enough, then one day I too would have my rightful place in the family, in my career, in love. I truly believed that until I realized that some shadows do more than block the light. They can swallow your entire life. I didn't react that night. I let Ella bask in the spotlight of her carefully crafted stage. I let my family keep worshiping her as they always had. But deep inside, a resolve had ignited. If Isla thought she could wear my wedding dress, steal my man, destroy my career, and still stand on that pedestal like a queen, then tonight would be the very last time. I called it the Truth Project, and this engagement party was only the opening act. Heist Chapter 2, A Childhood in the Shadow of the Golden Child. I was born 3 years before Illa. 3 years that should have been enough for me to hold a special place in the family, until the day she arrived. From that moment on, the light in our home no longer belonged to me. Ela was like a blazing sun, and everyone in my family revolved around her orbit. I still remember my 7th birthday. Mother had prepared a chocolate cake exactly as I wished. I had been excited for an entire week, even inviting all my classmates to our house. I thought it would be the one day of the year when I could shine. But then, Ella appeared wearing a pink princess dress, her cheeks flushed, her golden hair curled into perfect little ringlets. With just a single giggle, every gaze shifted toward her. My friends abandoned the games I had prepared, swarming around my little sister to gush over how adorable she was, to take turns holding her, to play with her. And in the photo from that day, I am standing beside an untouched birthday cake, its candles still unlit, while the whole room circles around Ella. I grew accustomed to that feeling year after year. At Christmas, she would squeal with delight when unwrapping gifts, while I simply smiled faintly. And of course, it was her squeal that everyone remembered. At family gatherings, Father would ask Ella about her latest drawing, while my academic achievements were brushed aside with a half-hearted, yes, very good, dear. I learned to swallow every pang of disappointment, convincing myself that patience would one day bring recognition. But that patience only turned me into the shadow of my own life. By the time I reached high school, the gap became undeniable. I had just won a statewide debate competition, while Illa had only made it onto the school cheerleading team. Yet on the front page of the local newspaper was a bright photo of my sister, radiant smile, petite frame, clad in her cheer uniform. My name, my achievement, was tucked away neatly on page 6, so small no one even noticed. When I finally dared to speak up, Mother only smiled and said, "Both of you are special in your own way." But I knew perfectly well which special way was the one framed proudly in the living room. Growing up in that shadow, I gradually learned silence. I became the one who endured the one who carried the invisible weight so that Ella could bask in the spotlight. But from within that very darkness, another pain grew inside me, the pain of being forgotten, dismissed, stripped of the right to be acknowledged. And I never suspected that this favoritism would not only steal my childhood, but also lay the foundation for everything Ella would later do to me when we were grown. Chapter 3. A Career Crushed. When I left that house full of favoritism, I thought I had finally escaped Illa's shadow. I chose my own path, my own career, one where effort and results alone would prove my worth. At Henderson and Associates, I threw myself into work with a burning desire to prove myself. I arrived earlier than anyone left, later than everyone, and took on the projects others refused. I still remember the first contract I salvaged. It was a major manufacturing client on the verge of leaving the firm because their previous manager had abandoned them. I practically lived at the office, pouring every hour into research rewriting the entire strategy. When the campaign succeeded, the client not only stayed, but insisted that I personally handle their account. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, not as a backdrop for someone else, but as the one in the spotlight. After a string of successes, I was certain I would be promoted. I had brought in 2 major clients, designed an award-winning campaign, and consistently surpassed my targets. In my mind, I had already envisioned the moment I'd be called into the director's office to receive congratulations. But that day, the director only looked at me with pity, telling me to be patient. "Your turn will come next time." The seat I longed for went instead to Jessica, someone who had been at the company for only half the time, who had never once secured a significant contract. The excuse was painfully familiar. "Jessica is better suited for client relations. You're just good at strategy." I walked out of that office with the echo of my childhood ringing in my ears. The same haunting question, what's wrong with me? Why is everything I achieve always diminished? Only this time, the pain was sharper. I was no longer a child being compared to my sister. I was an adult who had given everything yet was still pushed out of the light. But I did not give up. I told myself that if at home I had to live in Illa's shadow, then in my career I would create my own light. What I didn't know was that from behind the scenes, Illa was already preparing to lay her hands on everything I had built, ready once more to reduce all my achievements to ashes. Chapter 4. A Budding Love. Amid the long days of drowning in work and disappointment, a rainy afternoon brought David into my life. That day, I rushed into a small cafe to escape the downpour. My stack of documents drenched my coat heavy with water. All I wanted was a quiet corner to sort through the mess. When David looked up from the table next to mine, smiled, and offered me the seat by the window. "Rough day," he asked, his voice deep and warm, his eyes narrowing kindly. I laughed a laugh I hadn't expected from myself, and nodded, worse than a disaster. I didn't know why it was so easy to be honest with him. Maybe it was because his gaze carried no rush, no judgment. We sat there talking for 3 straight hours without realizing how time had slipped away. David was unlike anyone I had ever met. He had no interest in flashy displays or shallow boasts. He listened to every detail of my stories, remembered, even the small, seemingly trivial things I shared. He was a software engineer, yet he loved books, long walks in the park, and quiet evenings filled only with soft jazz. With him for the first time, I felt truly seen, truly heard, truly valued. In the months that followed, our love grew with every simple moment. Weekend mornings spent strolling through the farmer's market, where he would buy me flowers just to see me smile. Late nights cooking together, sharing conversations that wandered from childhood dreams to future plans. Once when I told him about the wedding dress I had spent months saving up for David, took my hand, his eyes glowing. "I wish I could see you in that dress. You'd be more radiant than anyone." That was the first time I believed I might actually deserve happiness. Each night when I looked at the dress hanging in my closet, I no longer saw just a distant dream. I saw a tangible future, me and David together. But I was naive to think that love, if sincere enough, would be immune to schemes from the outside. I had forgotten that Illa's shadow had never truly disappeared. It was only waiting for the right moment to smother the light I had just begun to find. Chapter 5. Illa appears, the beginning of a plan. I once thought there were at least some things Illa could never touch. I was wrong. The day I brought David home to meet my family, Mother called her voice, bubbling with excitement. "Everyone is looking forward to meeting him. Illa will be there too. She's so eager to see him." My heart skipped a beat, but I brushed it aside. Illa was my sister. This time surely she would leave me be. I was wrong. The very moment David stepped into the house, I saw Illa's eyes light up, as if she had just discovered a brand new toy. She descended the stairs in a flowing floral dress, her hair shining loose beneath the chandelier. The smile she cast at David was enough to silence the entire room for a second. "So this is David, the one you've been keeping like a treasure. I've heard so much about him, but never seen his face. Now I understand why." David returned her smile, polite, gentle. But I caught the flicker in his eyes, the subtle shift, as though my warm sunbeam was slowly being pulled into another sun's orbit. Throughout dinner, Illa missed no opportunity to ask questions, to laugh at just the right moments, to casually brush her hand against David's arm as if by accident. And I, the one who should have been the center of that evening, was pushed to the edges, listening as they spoke, animatedly, like long-lost friends reunited. On the way home, David smiled softly and said, "Your sister is really something. There's something unusually captivating about her." I forced a smile, hiding the sharp stab in my chest. Once again, I stood on the sidelines, watching what was mine slip further and further from my grasp. In the days that followed, Illa began appearing more and more. She texted, inviting me out, only to steer the conversation toward David. She invited both of us to a new bar, then sat beside him the entire evening, repeating things he had told her as if they were secrets, meant just for the two of them. Slowly I realized none of it was coincidence. Every move was calculated. I had grown used to Isla stealing attention, first from family, then from friends. But this time it wasn't just about glances and admiration. She was reaching for my heart, my dream, my future. And from that moment on, I knew this wasn't childish jealousy anymore. This was a plan, a game Ila had begun, and one I would have to learn how to face. Chapter 6. Erosion, Love Fractures. Career Falters. Ever since Isla inserted herself more and more into my life with David, the cracks began to show. At first it was only small things, a message where David said, "Isla just sent me a new hiking trail, I think we'll both like it," or a restaurant he suggested, with a casual Isla recommended this one, "Let's try it." Harmless on the surface, perhaps. But I understood. Each little detail was another invisible thread binding him tighter to her. Once I asked jokingly, "You and Isla text that much?" David chuckled. "Yeah, she's just cute, always sharing things." "Why are you making it a big deal?" I forced a laugh in return, but inside it felt like a boulder pressing down on my chest. I wanted to trust him to believe I mattered more than every one of Isla's suggestions, but that trust grew thinner by the day. As my relationship began to waver, my career also started to spiral. Mistakes I was certain I hadn't made suddenly appeared. An important email vanished from my outbox, costing me a major client opportunity. A meeting was rescheduled without my knowledge, leaving me arriving late in front of the entire management board. The breaking point came during a presentation my slides corrupted right before the session, forcing me to patch together notes by hand. I still held my ground, but I saw the doubtful glances, the whispers around the room. I asked myself, am I really losing my ability? Or is someone deliberately trying to bring me down? I didn't yet have proof, but my instincts screamed that a familiar hand was pulling the strings. And it wasn't hard to guess whose hand that might be. In the evenings when I returned home, David no longer asked about my work the way he used to. Instead, he spoke of conversations with Illa, of shared interests I had never once heard him mention before. Sometimes I sat across from him, listening to his voice, yet feeling as though I had become an outsider in my own relationship. My career crumbling, my love fracturing, I felt as though I was standing in the middle of a storm with nothing to hold on to. But what I didn't know then was that none of these losses were accidental. They were the result of a calculated plan, and the one controlling that storm was the very person who shared my blood. Chapter 7. Discovering the truth behind it all. Everything unraveled on what seemed like an ordinary afternoon. Illa called me, her voice full of worry. "Sis, my laptop broke. I have a presentation at the gallery tomorrow, but all my data is gone. You're better with computers. Can you help me?" I was already exhausted from work piling up, but I still went. After all, she was my sister. Ila's apartment gleamed spotless with fresh flowers in every corner. I sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and began running recovery software. The screen lit up, and that was when my world collapsed. Among the familiar folders, one name made my heart stop stare at work stuff. My pulse pounded in my ears. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked. What appeared made my entire body go cold. There were my emails, screenshots of my inbox, client documents, meeting schedules, all of it in Illa's possession. Next to many of the files were notes in her handwriting. "She's about to submit her presentation, corrupt the file." Or "Client is dissatisfied, exaggerate this." I couldn't breathe. The accidents I had thought were coincidences were nothing more than deliberate steps in her plan. Every failure I had endured had been orchestrated. And worst of all, a recording file. Her clear voice rang from the laptop speakers. "Marcus, you won't believe it. Sarah still trusts me completely, and David is almost entirely mine. It's so easy." I hurriedly closed the file as I heard Ila's footsteps approaching from the kitchen. She came out with 2 cups of tea, smiling as if nothing had happened. "You're amazing, really the best sister ever." I smiled back, hiding my trembling hands. Inside me a storm had erupted. All the doubts, all the dark suspicions I had carried, they now had undeniable proof. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the darkness, my mind spinning with images, the vanished emails David, casually mentioning Illa the lost career opportunities. Piece by piece they locked into place, forming one single picture. My sister didn't just want to steal my man. She wanted to destroy the career and dignity I had painstakingly built. I cried, but not out of weakness. I cried because at last I had seen her true face. And with every tear that fell, a resolve was born. If Isla thought she could keep the truth hidden forever, then she had chosen the wrong opponent. Chapter 8. Investigation and Gathering Evidence. After that night, I understood that only the truth could free me from the trap Illa had set. But truth could not rely on feelings alone. I needed evidence. I needed a plan. I began by tracing digital footprints. I had once attended a small cybersecurity seminar at work just to learn the basics of email and data protection. Now that very knowledge became my weapon. I retraced the complaint, emails sent to my boss, tracked the IP addresses, and every single one pointed directly to Ila's Wi-Fi network. But what made my breath catch was a fake email account disguised as a client. The display name was crafted cleverly with just one extra letter, something no one would notice unless they looked closely. From that account, a flood of negative feedback had been sent to my company, cutting off my path to promotion. And I knew there was only one person who would gloat at my downfall, Isla. It didn't stop there. On her cloud storage, I found an audio recording over 10 minutes long. In it, Ila giggled with a friend David is almost completely leaning toward me now. Sarah is always so weak, just a few repeated pushes, and she convinces herself she's inadequate. All I have to do is reach out and he'll willingly take my hand. I shuddered, hearing my sister's voice dissect me coldly as though I were prey. But I didn't stop with digital traces. I called a few former colleagues who had moved on to other firms. With careful conversation, I realized Illa had contacted them long ago, pretending to be a worried sister planting rumors that I was mentally unstable and losing control at work. Every sweet word of hers had become an invisible blade slicing my reputation apart without me even knowing. I gathered everything: emails, screenshots, recordings, confirmations. I pinned each timestamp onto a board in my living room like a detective reconstructing a crime scene. And gradually, the picture became clear. Every step, every detail, every accident in my life was a piece of a deliberate plan of destruction. At first, the feeling was pain. Then it shifted into rage. But finally, a strange calm washed over me. I was no longer just a victim. I now held the truth in my hands, and with it, I would decide when, where, and how to turn Isla's false radiance into ashes before the eyes of everyone. Chapter 9. The Engagement Party. The play begins. When Illa announced her engagement party, the whole family burst into joy. Everyone busied themselves with preparations, choosing dresses, buying gifts, rehearsing their well wishes. And me. I quietly organized my folders, the recordings, the printed emails, all neatly placed inside a small bag. I knew this would be the last night Illa stood on a pedestal as the family's golden child. The banquet hall was dazzling to the point of overwhelming soaring ceilings, glittering chandeliers, the soft melody of live instruments drifting through the air. I entered in a simple black dress, deliberately making myself look like a faint background figure. But my heartbeat remained calm, for I knew the secret was in my hands. And then I saw her. Illa stood at the center of it all, radiant beaming, wearing my wedding dress, the one I had saved for 8 long months to buy. Now it floated around her like a cruel insult. Relatives gasped with admiration, and she twirled with a mocking laugh. "This dress looks better on someone who truly deserves love." Her laughter blended with the family's applause while I stood there smiling faintly. No one knew that her very words had sealed her downfall. In my handbag lay a small remote. With a single press, every screen in the room would light up with what she thought had been buried forever: the fabricated emails, the vicious confessions, even her mocking laughter recorded for proof. As everyone raised their glasses in celebration, I stepped closer, smiling with the tenderness of a forgiving sister. I whispered, "Congratulations, Illa. You're truly radiant." Her eyes gleamed with triumph. She believed I had surrendered, that I would always remain the insignificant shadow. But it was in that very moment when she thought she had won that the curtain was about to fall. I knew that in just a few minutes, this entire room would witness the truth. And when it happened, nothing could save the perfect image Illa had so carefully built. Chapter 10. The Truth Revealed. The moment came faster than I expected. Just as the crowd began chanting, "Kiss, kiss," I rose to my feet, my voice calm but loud enough to capture the attention of the entire hall. "Excuse me, before we raise our glasses, I have a special gift for Illa and David. A slideshow of memories I've prepared." The hall erupted in applause, oblivious to the fact that this gift would change everything. I slipped the small remote from my handbag. In an instant, the massive screen behind the stage lit up. At first it showed harmless images, family photos, birthdays, a few casual gatherings. Then slowly I began weaving in the emails. The screen magnified each line of text emails sent under a false identity to my boss. "Sarah is losing control. I'm worried she may cause serious damage to the company." Beneath it, the sender's address appeared clearly traced back to Illa's computer. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard the murmurs, the whispers of confusion and disbelief. Illa froze her smile, turning rigid on her face. This isn't true," she screamed, but I pressed the button again. A recording filled the entire hall, her voice sharp and cutting every word, slicing through the silence. "David is practically mine already. Sarah is pathetically weak. Taking everything from her has never been this easy. The hall went dead quiet. My mother dropped her glass, the shattering echoing like a gunshot. My father whipped his head toward Illa, his face blazing red. David stood paralyzed, pale as a ghost, eyes wide on his bride-to-be. I drew in a deep breath and spoke slowly. For months, I've lived in the darkness my own sister created. She didn't just sabotage my career, she tried to destroy my entire life. And today, before all of you, the truth is revealed. Silence. Heavy, chilling silence. Then David stepped forward. He pulled the ring from Illa's finger, the sound of metal clinking against the table, loud enough for everyone to hear as he set it down. He glanced at me briefly, his eyes filled with shame and regret, then turned and walked away without a word. Illa screamed, "No, David, you have to listen to me. This is fake. It's been edited." But no one wanted to hear any more. The room dissolved into chaos, yet not a single hand reached out to steady her. I stood there quietly, watching my sister thrashing in the very wedding dress she had stolen from me. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Chapter 11, Consequences. After that engagement party, no one in the family could look at Illa the same way again. No more golden child, no more perfect daughter. Only the raw truth remained. She had destroyed her own sister just to shine. Mother was the first to call me. Her voice trembled, laced with sobs. "My daughter, I'm sorry. I was so blind. All these years I only saw Illa's light and never realized I had left you standing in the shadows. It's my fault. All of it is my fault." I froze. I had waited my entire life to hear those words. Yet when they came, my heart felt both relieved and bitter. I no longer blamed her, but I knew the scar would never fade. Father was quieter. He came to my home himself, his eyes bloodshot, his voice rough and broken. I rewarded Illa's charm and flattery instead of recognizing your effort. I taught her that as long as she looked pretty and knew how to perform, she could get anything she wanted. And now, I see I've raised a liar. I'm sorry, my daughter. Each word dismantled the invisible shackles that had bound me for years. I didn't need them to kneel and beg for forgiveness. I only needed them to finally see the truth. As for Illa, after that night, she vanished from the family. Some said she moved to another city. Others whispered she hid away in some apartment, too ashamed to step outside. I didn't care. All I knew was that her radiance had shattered in front of everyone, and no one believed in the angel she once pretended to be. My old company eventually came to understand as well. A few colleagues called apologizing for believing the rumors, for turning their backs on me. I didn't hold it against them. I knew exactly who had pulled the strings, but I also never forgot. The lesson was far too costly to ignore a second time. And David, he never called me. Perhaps he was ashamed, or perhaps he simply had nothing left to say. Either way, I no longer cared. That man was never worthy of the love I had once given. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, looking at the stack of evidence still spread across my table, I smiled. Not out of gloating, but because for the first time in my life, I knew I had stood up for myself, defended my own light. Chapter 12. A New Beginning. After everything I realized, this when one door slams shut, sometimes it isn't the end. It's the beginning of a path that truly belongs to you. Leaving Henderson and Associates, I carried my wounds, but I also carried the truth. And the truth, as it turned out, was the ticket to new opportunities. A rival firm, Sterling and Associates, reached out to me. They said they had heard about what happened, and that they knew I was the one truly behind the successful campaigns Jessica had once claimed as her own. They offered me a higher position, double the salary, and most importantly here, I no longer had to bow my head to lies. I began therapy, learning to mend the trust that had been shattered within my own family. My therapist told me, "You're not less than Illa. You only lacked one thing, the belief that you are worthy." That sentence followed me throughout my healing journey. And then when I had stopped searching, love found me. Thomas, a consultant in the industry, who had once heard me speak at a conference on rebuilding reputation after defamation. We talked for hours, not because I wanted to impress him, but because for the first time I felt safe being myself. He didn't need me to shine brilliantly, nor did he demand that I prove my worth. He simply looked at me and saw that I was enough. The day I wore a wedding dress again, it was no longer the stolen gown, but a shimmering champagne dress I had chosen for myself. I walked down the aisle with a different heart, not to prove anything to anyone, not to claim my family's approval, but to affirm to myself I am worthy of happiness. And this time, that happiness is mine. At the small, intimate wedding, I caught a glimpse of Ela sitting at the back row. She no longer carried the radiance she once flaunted, just a weary, lost face. I felt no hatred, only relief, because at last I was free from the meaningless race between us. My story is not one of revenge alone. It is a journey of rediscovering myself, of realizing that justice does not always require applause, only the truth standing on your side. Most of all, I learned this: the worth of a woman is not measured by the shadow someone else casts over her, but by her own strength when she dares to step into the light on her own 2 feet. Today, when I look back, I no longer see myself as a victim. I am a survivor. I am proof that the truth, no matter how cleverly hidden, will always find its way to the surface. And in that very moment, freedom is born. Looking back on it all, I understand now that life does not measure a person's worth by how long they stand in someone else's shadow. True value comes from daring to step into the light on your own 2 feet. Ella lost everything because of her lies. As for me, I found myself again. I found a new career, a new love, and above all, freedom. This is not just a story of revenge. It is a reminder that sometimes the truth itself is the sharpest weapon, and once it is revealed, no mask can last forever.